Welcome to the Happy Recruiting Show with Jody Brandstetter. Thank you to our sponsor, Talent Acquisition Evolution, a community for recruiting professionals to connect, learn, and work together. Today's show, we have a conversation about Skyline Chili, barbecue, and the future of talent acquisition with Brian White, Executive Director of HR at Auburn-Washburn Unified School District. And welcome to the Happy Recruiting Show. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Jody. Thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. So we actually met through the talent board through one of their virtual conferences. So that's how we met. But I would love for you to tell everyone a little bit about you, who you are, where you work, and where you're at.
Sure. So my name is Brian White. I'm the Executive Director of HR and Operations for Auburn-Washburn School District, which is a public school district in Kansas, Topeka, Kansas. And we have a little over 1,100 employees and another 200 plus subs. And so I've been in this position now for 8 years. I am also part of a school association for HR called the American Association of School Personnel Administrators, and I'm the president-elect for that organization. So prior to coming to schools, I worked in a variety of HR positions, including staffing and recruiting manager, a recruiting manager position, college relations manager, and I've worked for both retail and distribution, as well as in a corporate office. So got a lot of experience with talent acquisition and recruiting in general. And now in my current organization, I oversee all of the human resources operations, but certainly talent acquisition is one of the major parts that we do, making sure that we have staff to provide education for students.
And I'm sure you guys have had a lot of challenges with the pandemic and, getting students into the buildings, but also to be able to make your staff feel comfortable and confident and being able to do their job either virtually or in person.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so what part of the country are you in?
So I am in Topeka, Kansas, so Midwest.
Okay, wonderful. And so when we started talking about doing this, I asked you if you ever had Cincinnati Chili before, and you said once. And so I sent you some Skyline Chili to try. So I know you kind of made that. Yes, there it is. Made that to try. So I want you to just take one bite and then tell me what you think.
Okay, we'll try and do this without spilling too much.
There you go.
I don't know if you're supposed to stir it up or you just dig right in. I don't know. So we're going to give it a shot.
Yeah. And you put cheese on it. So hopefully there's lots of cheese.
It's good. I like it. Yeah.
Was it what you expected?
So yes, so I guess when I think about it, I love spaghetti, I love chili, and I love cheese. So I'm not sure what can go wrong with Skyline Chili. It's delicious. I love it.
Awesome. What is a cuisine in Topeka that if someone came there that they should try, or what you're known for?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's specific to just Topeka, but we're known for barbecue in our area. So we're about an hour away from Kansas City. So there's a lot of famous barbecue in our area of the country. And so in Topeka, it's Lonnie's Barbecue. So if you're ever in the Topeka area, look up Lonnie's Barbecue. It is fantastic. It's amazing. Definitely worth the visit.
Now, when you say barbecue, are you talking about like wings, pork, ribs, like anything that would be around barbecue?
Like pulled pork, just anything laced in barbecue sauce. So.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, we'll definitely, if I get to Topeka, I've only been to Kansas once. I've been to Lawrence. So, but if I get to Topeka area, I'll definitely try their barbecue. So, okay, good to know. And I always tell everyone when we're talking, like I could talk about food all day, but we're not here to talk about just food. We're here to talk about talent acquisition, HR, and kind of where we see our industry moving forward. So I would love to know, based off your experience, what are a few tips that you would give to a recruiter or to a talent acquisition leader that would help them with kind of moving forward with where we're at today?
Yeah. I think one of the things that's very important to me, and I think it's really important to talent acquisition in general, is just that relationships matter. And so when you're recruiting, whether it's one position, whether you're leading recruiting for an entire organization, talent acquisition, it's the relationships that help you to be successful in building those relationships with candidates. And I guess the other piece of that is creating emotional connections through that process with candidates. So by understanding what they're looking for, by listening, by helping connect that to what you have to offer, that's where you start to create some of that emotional connection, but you're also building those relationships. And what I found over the course of my career is that when you build those relationships, those candidates are much more committed and loyal and dedicated to coming to work for your company, rather than when they're treated like a quota or a number. So relationships matter.
So you're talking about bringing the human into the human resource and really paying attention to the person.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And I know that you just talked about candidate experience, and we met obviously through the talent board about the candies and everything. And I know when we were talking that you guys just won your second candy award, which is fantastic. So tell me, what are you guys doing differently than maybe a company that didn't win a candy award?
So, it's kind of a funny story because, I went to a conference, a HRE conference back, I think in 2016. And that was where I was first exposed to the talent board and to the candies. But I heard a lot at that conference about candidate experience and the importance of candidate experience. It really resonated with me because just to simplify it down to the shopping experience, if you have a bad shopping experience, you're going to tell people don't go shop there. And if you have a good experience, you find a good deal, you're going to say, hey, you should go find that deal or you should go there. So it really just resonated with me that, hey, that's something that truly is important in talent acquisition. And at that time, we were facing a teacher talent shortage across the United States. So, and that still is the case. And some of our classified or hourly positions were getting harder to fill with record low unemployment rates. And so we had to look at how can I differentiate our organization and get ahead of the competition in hiring talent. And so one of the ways that I looked at was, well, that candidate experience, I certainly don't want our candidates to experience anything that's going to remove them from the pool. And if I can have a great candidate experience, maybe that'll increase our talent pool. And so for a time of shortage, that's where it became really important to me, and kind of went down that journey of starting, how do we get better at the candidate experience? So that was the start of that journey.
Walk me through the process. So I think that a lot of people probably don't know how you can actually win a candy. So what were some of the steps that you had to do in order to even put your name in the hat to be considered?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because the value to me at the time was getting our candidates to give us feedback so that I could help our organization make improvements with the candidate experience. And so when I started it, there's kind of like a box you can check. Do you want to be considered for awards or not? And so, you don't have to go for the award, but I thought, well, why not see what happens? But really the value was in getting the data and the metrics and being able to analyze that so that we can improve our candidate experience. And so I didn't even dip into it in my first 3 years because I thought we have so much work to do. And I worked with our organization, our leaders and our hiring managers and in recruiting to kind of work on how do we get better and make some improvements. And so I joked my boss, who's a superintendent, like the CEO of the organization, that, hey, we're going to do this and we might get some tough feedback, but it's going to help us get better. And we actually ended up winning that year in 2019. So basically you sign up through the talent board to participate to get the survey feedback. And then they have you fill out a couple things, information about your company, information about how many people you typically hired, those kind of things. And then they give you the survey that then you provide to candidates. And so we used our applicant tracking system to send that survey out to all of our candidates, regardless of what stage they reached, whether or not they were even contacted by us, to get that feedback. And we were able to look at that feedback along each stage of the candidate journey to figure out, do we have opportunities to get better or to improve what we're doing?
Did you have any aha moments or any wow, I had no clue that our candidates were feeling this way, that kind of helped you shift some of the process that you were doing?
So it's kind of a funny story, and I have to be careful the words I use to share it. But the very first day I sent out the survey, I got an email back, my first email back from a candidate, And the language was very colorful on how they were not going to fill out this survey and what I could do with myself. So I did go talk to my boss and said, I told you this might be tough. I just wanted to show you the first response I got. And so, again, we're going to learn a lot from this. So obviously that was one person that was not very happy with the process. What I'll tell you is that one of the things that I really learned through our first survey was how important it is to keep our candidates in the loop of what's happening. So from the moment they become interested to when they apply to any stage to make it through the process, you've really got to keep your candidates informed of what's going on and value their time. And so I think one of the biggest factors that I saw where the candidate experience began to dip a little bit is when we don't value their time. And part of valuing their time is just letting them know what's going on. And so that was something that we had to work on after that first survey.
I feel like the status update when you don't have a status is hard for a recruiter to think about doing when it's so impactful on the candidate experience. I've heard candidates say, I will spend more time in an interview process as long as I know I'm still being considered. And that's really impactful to know that I can, take 4 to 6 weeks to hire this individual and they'll stay active and interested as long as I just tell them I don't have an update right now, or the hiring manager hasn't reviewed your resume, or I haven't gotten the feedback from the hiring manager. And those are things that I think a lot of times recruiters don't do, and they don't think about it. They only think about, okay, I'm going to tell them when they move forward. I'm going to tell them when they're rejected. I'm going to tell them when they're going to have an offer. And those minutes of uncertainty through the minute, I say minutes, it could be days, but the time of uncertainty is when you don't know, am I still being considered or not? And that's where a candidate really will, stick by you if you actually have that conversation.
Absolutely, and it really came clear to me because in working through making improvements to how we do things in the talent acquisition process and the candidate journey, we did, and we may talk about this later, but we did add a chatbot to our career site. And so that chatbot has some artificial intelligence to it, and it kind of helps gather some information from the candidates at their point of interest. But then we take over for it so that it's actual personal communication back and forth with the candidate. And I'm in a decentralized kind of recruiting model. So our hiring managers are our principals, or our leaders in our buildings. And so they end up doing the interviewing. And so I would get messages on the chatbot like, hey, I'm just trying to find out, what's going on, or hey, I'm just trying to find out if I'm being interviewed. And so I started to kind of get this feedback directly from candidates through that chatbot on, we've got some black holes of communication going on right now, and they're just wondering. And so if we can fill those black holes or not let people go into a black hole, I think they just feel better about the entire process. And even if it is hey, I don't know anything right now, but I just want to touch base with you before the end of the week.
Did you have any difficulties adding a chatbot to your process as far as any concerns that it might actually be more of a negative than a positive, or how were you able to kind of make that decision that this would be the best thing for you and your organization?
Yeah, so I think you always have to look at your entire process and the systems that you currently have in place. And so as I was looking at those things, I didn't really have the capability with my applicant tracking system or any other things that we did to text back and forth with candidates. And I knew that, all of us have phones that we carry around, and I would say most of us probably look at text first before anything else. So I really wanted to be able to get into that space of being able to connect and engage and communicate with candidates for those that wanted to through text communication. And so the product I was looking at the time allowed me to do that. And so I looked at how I could add that into my process. And so supplement everything else we were doing, but that's how it helped me out, was being able to text back and forth with candidates.
Gotcha. I think that there's a lot of industries where text messaging is huge, because if an individual is on a warehouse floor or in a hospital setting or teaching, they can't always check their email or be able to be at a computer, but their phone might be right next to them. And so you might be able to get an easy text back of like when they are available, or you just might be able to kind of start that process in a way that works for them versus maybe what works for the organization or the employer.
Absolutely. And, I think I was talking to a group the other day, and it was a Zoom group. So I had all the panels up on the screen, and, I asked them, right now, if somebody's trying to call you or email you or text you, which one do you think you'd respond to the first? And you know, the reality was everybody in that Zoom said, well, text. So you got to think about that for your candidates too. You know, we don't know where they are or what they're doing, but we can be fairly assured that they're going to be able to get to a text in a reasonable amount of time.
And so with your chatbot text technology, what are you using, or, you know, what are some of the different technology that you feel like have really impacted your candidate experience as well as the process to help you kind of push forward and be successful?
Yeah, sure. So I would say specifically some of the things that we did starting out 2016 up to today, we did change our applicant tracking system. So our applicant tracking system was mobile friendly, and that was not something we had previously. And so we use a product called Smart Recruiters. We're very happy with it, but it allowed us to get into that mobile platform. We also added the chatbot to our career site, and that's a company called Paradox.ai. I believe it was originally called Olivia. And then we also ventured into the virtual career fair world with a product called Brazen. And so we were very happy to have that and be using that before the pandemic started, because we were already set up and ready to go when we had to move to virtually for some of our recruiting events.
How have you been able to use that virtual career fair platform? What are maybe some best practices that you've learned that other employers could, you know, take and run with?
Yeah, so I would say with the virtual platform, one of the key things I've learned is you are only going to be as successful as your marketing of the event. So, you know, it's not a case of if you build it, they will come. You've really got to market it. And so some of the keys that I've learned in that is wherever you're recruiting or however you're marketing, and we originally targeted college recruiting for that, is you've really got to find the influencers in that market to be able to share that event. So at a college, it would be finding that professor that the students listen to and love. And it might not be the career center, it might not be the dean of the department, it might be the professor that they absolutely, you know, would go to bat for. And so if you get that professor to share it, then you're going to have a lot more people attend your event. So it's kind of that same thing. Student organizations, is there a student organization? Is there a student in that organization that they all listen to? But finding those influencers, I think many years ago in recruiting, we used to call it the gatekeeper, how to get through the gatekeeper. So
that is so big. And I think you almost kind of went right back to circling to what you started with, was relationships. So not even looking at the relationships that with the hiring manager, with the candidate, but what relationships do the candidates have? Who are going to impact them with those decisions? That could be their support group, could be a professor. So really understanding, okay, I might be able to, you know, get this in front of, you know, someone that influences them, and they'll be able to move forward. I remember one time we were still using the newspaper to post. We had like open interviews at an organization, and a candidate comes in, and I asked him, how did you hear about it? And he's like, my grandma told me I had to come. And I'm like, what do you mean your grandma? And he's like, you put it in the paper, she saw it, she knew I needed a job, and she told me to physically come in and interview. And it's like, wow, again, we found someone that was in their support group that was able to influence them to come in and interview, just like a professor. If a professor says, hey, this is a great company, they're going to take more consideration in that than maybe a career service person they've never talked to.
Right. You know, and the other thing I would point out with the virtual career fairs, and just in general, is I think also if you can, and it goes back to the relationships and the emotional connection, but if you can provide an experience that will connect candidates to your job opportunity or to your company, it's that experience that they'll remember, and that's the emotional connection that you're looking for. So an example of that is, you know, we need teachers. So you know, I can post a job for teachers or a career fair for teachers all day long, but, you know, what if I change that and I provide an opportunity for people in the community to understand more about teaching and get more information about, you know, a teacher experience and what does that look like? And hopefully that leads to people wanting to become teachers. So, you know, trying to provide an experience, and we do one with bus drivers where in our community, we actually say it's the Bus Driver Experience Day, and we put it out throughout, you know, social media, the community, through the news. Come drive a bus, see what it's like. And so, you know, if you're a parent, you've never driven a bus and you put your kid on the bus, it's been kind of fun for them to kind of come on, drive and see what all our bus drivers do. So it's also a good PR thing, good community building relationship thing. And it has resulted in some people saying, hey, I can do this and I'd like to be a bus driver. So providing that experience, whether it's virtual or in person, I think can also be huge.
You also told me before we had this conversation that you just went through the pilot program through Talent Board on the candidate experience certification. I would love to understand that better. I've seen information that Kevin Grossman sent out, but would love to know kind of what that looked like and what you got from that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, it's been a little while since I've been in an education type of program or course. And so, you know, the last, I guess, frame of reference I have would be getting my SPHR. And, you know, that was a much different experience, you know, and going through that, you know, it was, at the time I did it, it was more self-paced, and I went through it with a couple other people and we kind of studied together and did a lot of memorization, and then, you know, took that test online and then, you know, kind of closed my eyes and prayed to see what the results were. So, so this was a lot more interactive, a lot more engaging. And so it was through an online platform with a virtual discussion incorporated with a facilitator. And so, you know, there was a lot of good content based around the best practices of candidate experience. And it was really nice because I think it really was relevant regardless of the scope of your position, the type of industry that you're in, and the type of jobs that you recruit for, because you could take the information that they were sharing and really apply it to those things. And so, you know, it really followed the modules that we went through, followed kind of the different steps in the candidate journey, and really focused on the candidate experience and the things that you can do as an organization and in talent acquisition to make a difference for the hiring success in your organization. So it was about a 6-week process. We were just now finishing up. And so there were components of, you know, where you kind of had some sit and get, where you'd watch and learn and follow along. And there was some, you know, assessments during the course of the, or during that process where you kind of check for your knowledge. And then at the end, there is a kind of a test that you go through to test your knowledge. But it's a little different because you kind of say, you know, how you think you are from a knowledge perspective, and it will gear that test and help you learn as you go to, you know, kind of finalize the certification process. So, so overall, I would say it was well worth it. You know, I felt like I had a really good understanding for candidate experience going in, but I still learned a lot. And part of that learning too was in the discussion with some of my peers and hearing the neat things they were doing. And I'm already taking some of those, trying to implement those in my districts. You're probably going to ask, well, what? So one thing is TikTok. We're going to try and start a TikTok employment channel because I heard some other people that did it. I'm not a TikTok person, but I know that's a market we are not communicating with at all, and probably with a generation that uses that platform quite a bit that we're not communicating with at all. So we're going to venture into having our own kind of TikTok channel for the employment in our organization.
That sounds very interesting. I am not on TikTok as well. I haven't tried to dive in. I'm still hesitant about Clubhouse, and if I want to use Clubhouse, there's so many social media tools out there where you could be using it. So understanding again where your audience is key. Well, Brian, I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for coming onto the Happy Recruiting Show. If someone would like to reach out to you and connect and maybe ask you more questions, you know, how can they reach you?
Yeah, so the easiest way would be to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to do that. I'm also, you know, on several other platforms. Twitter, you can find me on Twitter. But my email address is pretty simple. It's whitebry@usd437.net. So if you want to send me an email, I'd be happy to do that. And it's whitebry@usd437.net. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for watching this episode. Like what you saw, make sure you follow Talent Acquisition Evolution on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Happy recruiting.